Hello, hi, Leanne here. I'm going to cover a very controversial subject today, victimhood. And I say controversial because none of us is going to own up to the fact that we are thinking like a victim. And we all do it to one degree or another at different times in our life. However, sometimes we become so caught up in the story of our victimhood that we really become immobilized. The first port of call, of course, if somebody challenges our story or suggests that we're thinking like a victim, is going to be defensiveness and denial. And we're going to get huffy with that person. We're going to think, how dare they? We're going to think, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've experienced. How dare you tell me that I'm thinking like a victim? Okay, yeah. we can all be defensive, me included, I promise you. However, again, I'm interested in this subject because throughout the years of working with people as an intuitive personal empowerment consultant, um, you know, my aim has been to help people to become more empowered, um, to find ways forward so that they can get onto stronger ground, so that they can improve their lives, so that they can have more of what they really want. And the victim mentality completely gets in the way. However, there is a problem with that, is that when people are in that mindset, whether they kind of just got their toe dipped in it or whether they've got both feet in the middle of it, is that they usually are kind of reactive. They're reactive and they want to justify their position. Now, we've all been, well, most of us, maybe not all, but most of us have been in a position where we felt raw, we felt prickly, we felt kind of isolated. And if somebody comes along and, kind of highlights that, we're not very happy about it because we don't feel great about ourselves and we feel like we need to protect ourselves. So the purpose of this video is to just remind us to look at all the things that could point to us having fallen into a victim mentality, okay, a victim mindset. And then if we choose, we can get out of it. And I did think long and hard before approaching this subject, because I know how reactive people can be when they feel that their pain is being dismissed. But I think it's really important, because I can't even stand myself when I'm in that place, because I think, oh, come on, come on. There've been times when I've taken rejections in my work incredibly personal. And so it goes incredibly quiet business, because everybody's business does. If you're not out there hustling, I promise you, no matter what people tell you, the reality and the truth is that if you're not hustling out there, whatever line of work you're in, it's a competitive market, you're going to disappear. Okay. And so sometimes, yeah, it's easy to take that personally and think, well, hey, what's wrong with me? But you can't afford to do that, in business. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter. And largely this impacts upon self-employed people, of course, more so than, say, if you work in a supermarket or, something like that. Yeah, there's going to be quiet times when there's not a lot of customers in, but you're not really going to take that personally. But when you're self-employed, you tend to take it a little more personally. And then, of course, when it gets busier again, you forget about it until it goes quiet again. So, the victim mentality can come in all forms. But anyway, I've got my checklist, as I do, so I can kind of keep on track. And the first thing I've written, which is true, is it is possible to be a victim without thinking like a victim. Something that's blown me away, whilst observing the human race, is you come across people sometimes and, oh my God, they have suffered the most awful adversity. You have no idea how that person is still functioning, how they're still even, alive. And I found those kinds of people are very rarely in the victim mentality. And I've been trying to figure that one out. And people that I've been in awe of and thought, I don't know how you survive. I don't know how you're living with what you know in your head, what you've seen in your head. I remember once a young lady used to come to me for consultations. I haven't seen her for a little while, so I hope she's got her life together. But to cut a long story short, she was in her early 20s. She was in the armed forces. She was a paramedic. She had put in at least two, I think it was, tours, they call it, isn't it, of Afghanistan as a paramedic. And there were things that she hadn't told her mother. She had not even spoken to her mother about. And she told me some of them in one of her consultations. And I have never, ever forgotten that. And I thought, that girl is living with that in her head for the rest of her life. She can't make that stuff go away. But she wasn't saying pity me, poor me. In actual fact, what she was trying to do was create something in her life that was very feminine, very feminine. She wanted to get into beauty therapy. She wanted to develop her own beauty salon. And I understood why. It was almost like a way of cleansing that darkness. Find something pretty, find something beautiful, find something feminine, But what she told me, wow. And I thought, you poor kid, you're living with that now in your head for the rest of your life. But there are lots of other people on the planet, brave people who are the same. Now, do you understand? But it's also possible to be a victim of life. You may have had a rotten childhood. You may have come across some people that have treated you really badly. You may have hit a patch of incredible bad luck. Okay. But then the question is, where do we go from there? So it is possible, it is absolutely possible to be a victim of life, to be a victim of people, to be a victim of circumstance, but not think like one. It is possible. And I know that's true. And that's why when I know I'm sinking into victim mentality, I really remind myself of all the fantastic things I've got in my life. And I give myself a kick up the bum, okay? Because it's not going to take me anywhere. It's not going to heal my life. It's not going to create good things for my future. Okay, so signs, these are just some of them, and I'm sure there's some more that I've forgotten about, but you might be able to add them to the list. Signs of victim thinking. The first one I've got is hanging on to past hurts. That's a biggie. I promise you that's a biggie. I have given literally thousands and thousands of consultations over the years, and one of the most common reasons for people's unhappiness is their constant connection with the past, what happened in the past. Now, I'm not suggesting we all forget our past. We can't forget it. How are we going to forget it? It's part of who we are, but constantly revisiting it. And we all do that. And we may not be, revisiting things that happened donkeys years ago, but even last night lying in bed, I wasn't sleeping very well. It was a warm night. And it happens, doesn't it, when we're in bed and we're in that place between wake and sleep. Oh, all this stuff comes creeping in. And I started thinking about things I don't want to think about. They're in the past. I can't do anything about them. They caused pain and misery, but they're still there lurking in the background. And so when this happens, I consciously make a decision to switch my mind onto something else. And, when I am lying in bed, one of the things and my head is whizzing, one of the things I do is I relax my body so it feels like everything's just dropping down. And I make a connection. You can't just think it with your head and think, oh, I am connecting, because you've got to feel it. I make a connection with the great creative force of life. And I imagine it like a huge bright light, a bit like the sun. And I imagine it connected to me here in the center of my chest, and I relax my body. And I remind myself I am a part of the creative force of life in a positive way. I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. So that's one of the things I do if I'm in bed and my head is whizzing, to clear, to take my mind away from the stuff I don't want to think about. Okay, so that's the first thing, is hanging on to past hurts. The second thing is continuing to blame. Bitterness. Bitterness is a killer. I promise you, it will destroy everything. It will destroy how you feel emotionally. It will destroy your health. It will destroy your looks. Excuse me, my phone bleeping away there. It will destroy, and it leads nowhere good. I have worked with a huge number of bitter people over the years, and it taught me the importance of recognizing when we're falling into bitterness and do our best to get out of it. A few years ago, something really major happened within my family. I mean, big to us. And there was a period of time which was so difficult, so stressful. And I used to lie in bed at night sometimes, coming up with ideas of revenge on the people who had perpetrated this injustice. And it was an injustice. But I must admit, I mean, my revenge wasn't anything like going out and killing people. It was pathetic things, really. To be honest with you, really pathetic things, which I can kind of laugh about. Even stupid things like super gluing the gates of where they kept their car so they couldn't get out in the morning, or, dressing entirely in black and wearing a balaclava and going to where their business premise was and spray painting their windows black. Just stupid things like that. And then I thought, oh, get a grip, stop it, because you're falling into that place of blame. And I think maybe in a way we need to fantasize a little bit, but only for a certain length of time. And then we go, enough. Because you know what? The way I rationalized it was, in the end, everything worked out okay for us. It really, really did. And life isn't always just. It isn't, it isn't always just. However, as it pans out in the bigger picture, if we're doing our best to keep being healthy in our mind and to keep moving forward regardless, over time, a new balance will come. I promise you it will. And what I know is that the people who perpetrated the injustice, well, they've always been screwed up. They have always been screwed up when they're not battling with each other in the family and cutting one person or another out of the family for a period of time. It's just the way they operate. They're turning themselves on the rest of the world. They will always be that way. And so, I don't need to do anything about it. Do you know what I mean? We were okay. We just put our head, it was hard. It was really hard for a while. It was heartbreaking for a while. And for a while afterwards, every time I thought about the situation, even when we knew it was okay, I still got this in my chest here. And then I had to really practice not going there. And what I did was, it's called, it's called a pattern interrupt. That's what I call it anyway. You interrupt the pattern of your thinking. And what I did was, I've told other people this loads of times, but it worked for me. I picked a song. I picked Happy Talking, not because this song was really important to me, but I suppose because it had the word happy in it. And so every time this stuff came into my head that I could do nothing about, but made me feel lousy, I sang Happy Talking. If I could sing it out loud, I would. If not, I would sing it in my head. If I was lying in bed at night, I might sing it in my head, over and over again to get that thought out of my head. And it worked. It absolutely worked. And I knew it was working. So what I'd done was I was programming my brain, because this is what happens, is we develop patterns of thinking and we program our own brain. And I knew it was working when one day I was really annoyed about something. And then I was annoyed about being annoyed about it and thinking, oh, I promised myself I would be better than this. I promised myself I wouldn't get into that place. And I suddenly recognized that I was singing Happy Talking. I'd automatically kicked in to sing it to myself. So my brain had picked up. Do you see? And now I know that situation existed, but just only very, very, very occasionally will it just suddenly pop in my head. And if it is going to, it will be in the middle of the night when I'm between sleep and wake and restless, but only occasionally. Okay. So, continuing to blame it doesn't matter who did what to who, to quote Jeremy Clarkson. It doesn't matter, it matters, but from the point of view of where we're going and how we can feel in the bigger picture and how we can develop our life, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. None of us are entitled to the perfect childhood. I don't know what the perfect childhood is. I don't know anyone who had a perfect childhood. I know I certainly didn't. I definitely didn't. And I know other people who have had way worse childhoods than me and people who've had a lot better childhood than me. It doesn't matter from the point of view of this is where we are and this is what we're working with now, okay? And we can keep asking why. Why did they do this? Why did they not love me enough? Why did they abandon me? There's never going to be an answer. Just because, for example, somebody has sex and conceives a child does not mean that they are equipped to be a parent. And in an ideal world, they would be. But sometimes they're not. And that doesn't mean oh, we go, it just doesn't matter. But what we're saying is, yeah, that was tough. It hurt me, but this is where I am now. And that's where I want to go. I want to create happiness ahead. I want to create more happiness than I had then. So do you see how continuing to blame is never going to take us anywhere? Asking why me? Well, I've heard the great Les Brown say this, and it made me laugh out loud, on one of his seminars that I've watched online. If you're not familiar with Les Brown, then you need a good dose of Les Brown. You really do. And he goes, well, why not you? Give me the names and addresses of the people. It should be you instead of you. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? The way he put it was really funny. Yeah, so why not you? And of course, people will say, why us when there are bad people and paedophiles on the planet? I understand that logic. I absolutely do. But, again, it comes down to taking care of our own space and where we're at. Because let's face it, bad people may appear on the surface to be getting away with everything, but in here, they aren't. That when they die, when they leave this world, the soul, will take with them, as you and I will, the contents of the spirit. Our spirit is the relationship we develop with everything whilst we're alive, good, bad, or indifferent. And if you're a bad person who is deliberately and consciously set out to hurt other people, you are taking that stuff with you when you die. And it's not a case of being punished. It's a case of the recognition, the realization that you are living with that darkness. Now, I don't know that for sure. I haven't died in this incarnation and come back, so I can't tell you for sure. But that's how it seems to me. That seems to make sense to me. And from what I've experienced, that seems to make sense. So it may be no real help right now, but on the other hand, in the bigger picture, then there will be more of an answer. There will be more of an understanding in the bigger picture. That I know that's no help now, but still, again, if we're talking about actually surviving, not just surviving, but growing and becoming happier than we've been, then it's important to be able to get to grips with that one, yeah? This is one of my favorites, unfavorites. Everybody lets me down. I'll be honest with you. When I hear that from people, I just feel exasperated. Everybody lets me down. Well, I don't understand that because everybody doesn't let me down. In fact, I've had tough times in my life. I have had tough times in my life. By the time parental abandonment, by the time I was 16 and a half, living on my own, out in the world, etc., 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 all that stuff, but I don't think people let me down. It wasn't just me. Anyway, I had siblings. There are lots of people out there who didn't even know their parents, or, I've had awful childhoods. So we could say that people have let us down, but when we grow up and then we're associating ourselves with the world and we're going through our life and we're saying everyone lets me down, we really have to challenge that one. So yeah, we've all been let down. I think that's the point I was trying to make, just a minute or two ago. We've all been let down in one way or another. Society lets lots of people down. The establishment so badly lets people down at times. They slip through the net, these poor people. They've been let down. But, some of those people will not stay down. I will not stay down. I will fight back. And some of those people, they will recognize where they've been let down, but they will be incredibly grateful to the people who don't let them down. They will be incredibly grateful for the small mercies that bring them back up again. So, whenever anybody says to me, and if I had a fiver for every time somebody said to me over the years, oh, everybody lets me down, I'd probably be retired by now. I say, right, let's make a list. Everybody, come on, let's make a list. Let's get them all down on this piece of paper. And mostly it comes down to a couple of people. Quite often it was a parent from long ago. You can often throw an ex-partner in there, maybe a friend. So it's not everybody. There's over 7 billion people on the planet. So it isn't everybody. It's just a couple of people. And if we're finding that a lot of people let us down, or we say, I'm always doing everything for everybody and they never do anything for me, we are the common denominator. It's us, isn't it? It's us. So then what we have to do is figure out why, because there are lots of people on the planet who will never say that. So that could lead you to say, well, maybe it's the people you're associating with, because if you're only associating with the kinds of people who let you down, maybe you need to question that. So there's no answer to that one, is there? Everybody lets me down. What are we going to say to that? Oh dear, isn't that awful? I'm so sorry for you. Oh, so you've been designed by God, or you've evolved in such a way that unfortunately for you, just everybody that is drawn to you is going to let you down. Isn't that awful? That would be the only answer that you could give. Or there's another answer, which is why? Is it true that everybody lets you down, or is it your perception? Do you have expectations of people that they aren't meeting, or are you associating with people who are of that mentality where they don't give a flying stuff about anybody else? So that is an inside job. That everybody lets me down is an inside job. I can promise you, I have been an idiot in my life so many times. And yet I've had so many amazing people who have, despite me being an idiot, have still cared about me and bailed me out, And so I always think, in honor of the people that I've loved and are no longer here, in honor of all the people who have bailed me out, I need to keep being the best version of myself I can possibly be. Okay. So if you honestly, truly say and mean everybody lets me down, dig deeper. So it's either your perception and your expectations and you're feeling sorry for yourself, or you're hanging out with people who are maybe incredibly dubious or just selfish. Or it may be that you have emotional issues where you're looking for approval, you're looking for validation. And so you kind of got caught in a loop where you're trying to gain approval, you're trying to gain validation, but it's not working. And so the issue there is, again, an inside job. Can you work on bit by bit, step by step, not needing that validation and that approval? Yeah, because that would really empower you, wouldn't it? Imagine not feeling like that very often. Excuse me, spitting. Not feeling like that very often anymore. So everybody lets me down, then get away from those everybody if you can. If they're family members, then, I think, again, in my experience, families can generally be quite bad for our health. They're wonderful on one hand, but they also cause us a huge amount of pain on the other hand. And I think it's pretty much the same for everybody. So if it's family members that are letting you down, you just have to find a way of saying, well, do you know what? This is the way it is. I'm not going to get rid of them out of my life because I do love them, even though I don't like them very much sometimes. So I'm just going to find ways of adapting. But I'm not going to say anymore, everyone lets me down, because it's a whinge. It is a whinge. Okay. Here's a biggie. Posting statuses on social networking sites. These, now I'm sure there's loads more, but these are just a small sample, 2 or 3. Okay. No one knows she has tears in her eyes. She smiles and pretends she is fine. And then people like this. So obviously they're relating to that. They're relating to this goddess going through her life. And it's always female. It's always put in the female form from what I've seen. So I'm sure men also, there are men out there who also relate to it as well, but they usually put in female form. So if somebody is liking this, they're obviously relating to it. Look at me. I'm struggling. I have tears in my eyes, but I'm still going on with it, right? The next one is, don't judge me till you've walked in my shoes. Well, yeah, that's true. We've all judged people and then found out they've got a much bigger story. I remember years and years ago, there was a lady that used to work in a bakery where we used to go to each day. And she was always miserable. She was never smiled. She never spoke to you. And of course, that's uncomfortable when you go in a place and you always get that. It's not nice, is it? However, sometime later, there was an article in the local paper about this woman and the struggles that she was having with a disabled son. And our partner had walked out on her and just left her coping. And so this lady had obviously closed in on herself. Now, there are lots of other people out there who, I hold my hand up to them. It's tough. They're dealing with really difficult problems. It might be somebody in their family who's disabled or mentally disabled or physically, or it might be an elderly parent that, is having major problems. And not all people that are in that position are miserable and switched off, but some people are. But at least it explained. So we were judging that lady and going, she's right miserable, so and so. She is, isn't she? And I'm pretty sure some people would have said to her sometimes, oh, for God's sake, smile, it's not the end of the world. And she probably felt like punching them. So I understand that we can all judge people without knowing their story. And I've been judged in my life without people knowing my story. I know that for sure. But, nobody's really interested in our story. That's the thing, isn't it? They're not. Well, they are, but there are some people that will be interested in our story. But there are many others who won't be. So it just is the way it is. We will still come across miserable people and judge them and then find out they've got a bigger story. We ourselves will still be judged. However, if we're going on social networking sites, putting up statuses like that, we are saying, I'm a victim. Look at me. I'm surviving. You don't know how hard I'm working. You don't know what I'm going through. And at the end of the day, there's only the only people who will care, the only people who will like those statuses are people who think the same way. So you're in a gang. You're in a gang then of people who think, oh, I'm a victim. You don't want to be in that gang. You don't want to be. Look, if you've got a problem, and sometimes people go on and have a rant, and God knows I've done it myself, but you go on and have a rant about a subject, and you go, do you know what? This really peed me off. You get it off your chest, and then people will comment. And okay. Now, I'm not talking about the nasty, vicious rants. Oh, so-and-so did this to me, and I hope my ex-husband dies a horrible death. I'm not talking about those, okay? I'm just talking about having a rant, okay? And people will understand we've got it off our chest. But if we're doing this cryptic stuff, the only people who are going to join in with us are people who relate to us. The same as the only people who will like statuses like, she walks around with tears in her eyes, but nobody notices and she pretends she's fine, are the people who relate to it. Again, you don't want to be in that gang. There's two more. And I know this is controversial, but I think I've made it clear that I'm not dissing people. I'm explaining how we can turn it around and find a better way forwards. Strong women cry their tears behind closed doors. No, you're not crying your tears behind closed doors. You're on Facebook, okay? You're all, whatever it is, I don't know, or any of the other sites, okay? You're on there doing that stuff. Who cares? If you've got an issue or a problem in the real world, there are lots of really nice people on social networking sites. And if you've got a problem and you go, you know what, this is my problem today. I know I sound negative, but this is how I feel today. People will come forward and they will give you genuine concern. They'll show genuine concern. They'll give suggestions. They might say, oh, sorry, thinking about you. But this stuff is drama. It is not strength. That is not strength. Strength is a quiet thing, okay? And we all have strength within us, and we've all done incredibly strong things. The thing is, the strongest things we've ever done, we probably don't even notice. We don't acknowledge it. We don't go, dear God, do you know what? I got through that time, or my God, I managed to do that. I managed to make that happen. I managed to get, whatever it is. Sometimes the strongest we've been, we don't even notice. But when people are putting stuff up there like that, they want attention. It's attention getting. They want somebody, maybe they don't know how to express their pain. Maybe they don't know how to express their problem. And so it is about attention, but it's not a good way of going about it. And again, the only people who will join in and like it are people who are feeling the same. And when you're in that position, you don't need people who feel the same. You need people who can maybe help you to be more uplifted. And the last one on this list is, and this is again, I'm running out of time. I talk too much, don't I? So